Okay, I think that's our cue. I'll go ahead and pass over the meeting opening to Bonnie, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. This meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Trustees sitting on the Board of Retirement and Board of Investment, Mr. Santos,
Present.
Mr. Bernstein,
Here.
Mr. Knox,
I'm here.
Mr. Kehoe.
Present?
Trustees sitting on the Board of Retirement, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Oakham. Mr. Oakham is present. Mr. Harris, Mr. Moore, Mr. Robbins,
Present.
Miss Gray,
Present.
Ms. Sabantha. Trustees sitting on the Board of Investments, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly is present. Mr. Jones,
Present.
Mr. Green,
Morning, Patrick.
Ms. Greenwood.
Good morning. I'm here.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you. Staff participating in the meeting include CEO Santos Kryman, AEO JJ Popowich, Interim Chief Counsel Johanna Fontenot, Chief Investment Officer John Grable. The management team include Alan Cochran, Bernie Buenaflor, Carlos Barrios, Carlina Toya, Cynthia Martinez, Kim Hines, Kathy Delino, Sami Wong, Cecil Templo, Richard Bendel, Ricky Contreras, Ted Granger, and Vincent Lim. Bob Schlofeld, our CISO, is participating as well, and Admin Service Analyst Kaylin Ung. Trustees, if you have a comment or question on any item, please use the Zoom chat feature to be placed in the queue. And at this time, we ask all the meeting participants to mute their mics until you are ready to speak, and we may proceed with the agenda now.
Great.
Bonnie, you got me. I'm back.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
So without objection, we'll consider that the call to the order. So we will move on to the approval of the minutes. And this is for our February 24th, 2021 meeting. I'll need a motion.
I'll move the minutes.
So moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and please do a roll call vote.
Mr. Knox,
Aye.
Miss Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Miss Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Bernstein,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Chair Kehoe.
Present?
The motion
Oh, yes.
passes. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, we're moving on to item 3, which is public comment. We've received no request from the public to speak, so we will go ahead and move on to our next item. We have a non-consent item that was pulled at the request of staff. So item A, we're going to go ahead and pull it for further development from staff. So we should be saying that again in the future. And that will bring us to item 5, which is our reports and our preliminary budget report. So Kim Hines, are you going to do it, JJ? Or are you going to?
I'm going to start it off and then I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
Perfect. Thanks.
So good morning, Chair Kehoe and trustees. The Joint Organizational Governance Committee Charter provides for the JOGC to have an opportunity to give guidance and input during the budget presentation process. And normally in March or April, we meet with the committee and present a concept draft budget. The committee and other trustees in attendance have an opportunity to ask questions and discuss the proposed budget. And then based on that discussion, the committee provides input and recommendations to the budget team, which is used to develop the budget that is advanced to the Board of Retirement and Board of Investments for consideration. During the development phase each year, the budget team meets with managers to discuss their plans for the coming fiscal year as we work to fulfill our mission, continually improve services to our members, and focus on meeting our strategic plan initiatives previously approved by the boards and the recommendations outlined in the CEO's 100-day report to the boards. During this process, we review their specific goals as outlined in these plans and the day-to-day needs of their operation. And to facilitate that discussion, each manager is asked to present metrics and data to the budget team and the executive office that provide insight into the successes and challenges of their operations and to justify their resource requests. Throughout this process, the management team focused on building the budget based on collaboration and cross-divisional cooperation. And we believe that this approach to integrated budgeting has allowed us to develop a budget plan that allows us to complete our outstanding strategic initiatives, make substantial operational improvements, streamline organization to make it more efficient, and to develop a sustainable infrastructure for our future focused on providing the high level of service we want to provide to our members in a safe and secure ecosystem while strengthening our retirement fund through efficient management of resources. While we recognize that the past year has been a very difficult year for many of us, it has had a silver lining. It has necessitated LACERA to take a new approach and a new outlook, a new fresh outlook on what's possible and what's achievable. In order to adjust to the pandemic, we had to be innovative and adaptable. We had to deploy new technologies and develop new ways of working together and providing services to our members. We feel that this crucible has left LACERA in a strong position to seize on this new outlook and the opportunities it presents to continue innovating for the future. And with this in mind, the budget includes requests for additional staffing in key areas to ensure we have the right talents in the right place. Each new position is justified to ensure that we have the right, that we're justified by improving services to members, making LACERA more efficient and secure, succession planning through knowledge transfer and preparation for people that may be retiring in the near future, and strengthening our administrative support services to allow LACERA to meet our promises to our members. It also includes requests for funding for key initiatives that are outlined in the proposed budget. So at this time, I'd like to ask Kimberly Hines, Division Manager of Administrative Services, to provide an overview of our budget request. Kim?
Thank you, JJ. Good morning. I just want to start off by quickly, just a quick reminder about how much money is available to spend in the budget. So Government Code 31580.2 indicates that we may not exceed 0.21% of the accrued actuarial liability. So that amount is 164 million, about 164. And so our budget request for this year is 115 million. So that leaves a contingency amount of 49 million. So the budget request of 115 million represents an increase of 15 million from last year's budget. Or I should say, as of the mid-year budget that we adopted in December. So of this 15 million, 10.8 million of the increase relates to salary and employee benefits. So to walk you through some of the assumptions used in calculating the budget, we, for current field positions, we actually budget at the actual projected cost. So the actual cost of that position will be for the coming year. And so for vacant positions, we budget at the first step of the salary range. And then also we calculate salary savings. So if it takes 6 months to hire that position, we will not include those 6 months of funding in the budget. So that's what's considered our salary savings. So another assumption for this year relates to cost of living adjustments. For this budget, we did not include cost of living adjustments because those negotiations have not been conducted. So let's talk about what caused the increase in salary and employee benefits. So one of the components includes salary savings. So I consider that funding that was not included in last year's budget. So if I can give you an example of that, so in our legal office, we have a director of compliance position. That position has been approved by LACERA's boards. However, it has not been processed through the Board of Supervisors. So last year, we did not include funding for that position. And so for this year, we anticipate that position being processed through the Board of Supervisors and as well as being hired. So for this year, funding has been added to that position. So that's a component of what is causing this increase. So there are also other positions in the budget that we took salary savings for. And that's an example of that is, say we know we're not going to hire this position until the fourth quarter. So so for 9 months, we would not have included funding. So that's another component of this increase for this year. So these types of salary savings that were taken last year attribute to approximately 7.8 million of the increase for this year's salary and employee benefits. So another component of what causes the increase relates to adding staff. So for our budget request for this year includes adding 21 positions to the budget, and that is including salary savings. That's estimated at 2.2 million of this increase. So specific details about these positions being added are also included in your budget packet. So just to provide you a breakdown of total budgeted positions, our current budget includes 459. The request is for 21. That will take us to 480 positions. So let's see. Moving on to services and supplies. Costs are estimated at 25.4 million. That represents a $4.3 million increase from last year. The majority of this increase relates to building costs. So if you can recall, in December 2020, we negotiated a new lease. With that negotiation, we changed our methodology to related to how the building is accounted for as an investment and related to transparency and recording actual rent costs. So as a result of that change, it caused our rent and building expenses to go up. So $3.5 million of the $4.3 million increase is related to this rent change. So another 1.3 million of the increase relates to our request to renovate office space. The request for this year includes renovating systems and the accounting division. Both of these divisions have not been renovated for over 15 years. Okay, so moving on to retiree healthcare. So their current budget includes 31 positions. They are requesting 6 new positions. The budget request is 11.4 million, and this is 2.3 million more than last year. So the salary and employee benefits request increase of 1.4 million is similar, the similar reasons that I went over for the LACERA budget, the salary savings, the new hires. And then the details about these new positions are also included in the budget document. Services and supplies request includes an increase of approximately 900,000. And the majority of the increase pertains to overhead costs. So overhead costs relate to the time and resources that LACERA staff spend to support the retiree healthcare program. So as LACERA's budget increases, so does the overhead cost for the retiree healthcare program. So that's where you see the majority of the increase for their services and supplies. Lastly, moving on to OPEB. The budget request is for 683,000, represents an increase of 100,000 from last year. So the cost allocation process for OPEB is similar to the retiree healthcare program, in which LACERA staff and resources are spending time to support the OPEB program. And that's where, so the same thing, LACERA's costs go up, so the OPEB costs go up. So that's pretty much it for the overview. We stand to entertain any questions you may have.
Perfect. Please use the queue if you would like to be, or the chat function if you'd like to be placed in the queue. And I will open it up for questions regarding any parts of the proposed budget that's in front of us. I have Mr. Kelly.
Excuse me, thank you. Thank you. I had some questions. I'll send these also to you. We have a current strategic plan and a current IT strategic plan that have been approved by both boards.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yes, that's a question.
Oh.
We have a current strategic plan and a current IT strategic plan that have been approved by both boards.
I'll let you answer that.
Santos or JJ, can you address that?
Yeah, we do have a strategic plan and an IT strategic plan. However, that has been approved by the board. So we did take those elements into consideration in the development of the budget.
Can
We
you send
also-
those to me? Because I don't have those. Can you
Yes.
send those to me? I don't have them.
We can send those to you.
Thank you.
The other thing, I'm sorry, the other thing that helped inform the budget is the 100-day plan that was presented to the board. I think it was in April of last year or May of last year. That was also heavily considered in the development of the budget as well.
Okay. The proposed temporary budget is $3 million. And if you use just a rule of thumb that the average hourly rate is $50, that $3 million is employing about 30 full-time staff.
Mhm.
And then you're asking for 27 new positions. So my question is, why, with the increased number of staff that you're asking, is the temporary budget not going down further than proposed? You might want to get back to me on that one, that's fine, but I just didn't see it. I didn't see it a significant reduction in temporary budget that I would have thought I would have seen, given the request for people. As well, it stuck, the conversation about member benefits kind of stuck out to me. And I don't know if the statistics are, I assume the statistics are correct, but if you look through the numbers that staff lay out in their narrative, they say that they can process a retirement application for a legacy retirement, which I assume is everything but Plan G, in 3 seconds. Now I can't even unmute myself on this computer in less than 3 seconds. So 3 seconds is pretty fast to me, right? But yet it takes 8 minutes to process a Plan G requirement, a Plan G application for retirement. And I think most of that difference is related to Plan G has embedded pay codes and Legacy doesn't. I don't know what that means, but I think that's the reason. The auto controller seems to have automated its identification of embedded codes years ago, but we haven't done it on our side. But my real question, so that's a big question for me. It's just that are those times right in terms of average processing? And then I get the need for additional staffing, but whoever wrote the narrative stated there's a significant backlog. So is the staffing going to clear the backlog plus maintain ongoing applications at a reasonable processing time? If so, then at some point after that backlog is cleared, that unit will have excess capacity because it's just maintaining ongoing processing. So that whole section for member benefits didn't come together for me. Also, it would be helpful if you included organization charts for these operations. I didn't see organization charts. And then at some point, when I last served, I can't remember if I or Mr. Bernstein asked for it, a 10-year a trend line of actual expenditures versus this year's budget, both in terms of expenditures by line item and then also by people. And then also for people would be helpful. Those are my questions and comments.
Okay, so we have the acting division manager over benefits here that can answer some of the questions related to the write-up.
I'm gonna also, I'll zip you these in an email, these questions, so you have them.
That would be great.
And just address them next time because you're coming back to the board in another month, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That was it for me, thank you.
Well, we're coming at the end of the month. May, I believe. We're coming back in May.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
So Carlos, did you want to address some of those while you're here?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair
Hi,
and
Carlos.
trustees on the board. Good morning. So the time frame you gave, I'm not too sure the seconds numbers you gave, but the time for processing the legacy versus PEPRA is in minutes. So the PEPRA retirees and salaries are taking 228 minutes to process versus a legacy, which is 112. So that's significantly increasing our processing time.
But those were total minutes
Those are
for the
minutes.
number of applications included in the sample. So the table had number of applications and then the total minutes for those applications.
The minutes are in per application it takes to process. So you would multiply the two together. So
Oh,
perhaps
that's
we
not
can
clear
come up
at
with a
all.
better chart and that would make it more understandable.
Yeah,
Eh,
column headings
my
would be
apologies.
helpful. Column headings would be helpful in that instance. Yeah,
We
that
can
wasn't
certainly-
clear at all.
Yes.
Okay.
Your next question was regarding the staff and the number of staff and the backlog. Yes, there is a significant number of backlog that's going to take quite some time to clean up and maintain the ongoing work. The staff, although it may appear that there's going to be extra staff at the end, there are other areas that we are still needing to add staff to. So we haven't increased entirely. Those staff we will not have an excess number of staff in the end. This is something that is new and we found just recently, and it's added work. And the backlog is just going to take us some time to get through. So, but at the end, I don't find we're going to have extra staff because there's more than enough work to do.
And what is the impact to members of this backlog?
The impact to members is currently the contributions are not being taken from when members are paid a retroactive salary. And the system, the auditor controller system, doesn't appear to be set up to take that contribution for retroactive payments. And of course, there are a significant number of retroactive payments throughout the county. So those numbers are building. At this point, we are actually falling behind. And one of the reasons for adding more staff is so that we can, number one, keep up the pace. Number two, we want to get a handle on the backlog. And by the time we get a handle on the backlog, I believe that we're going to need more staff again, and we may not need to come back to you again for more staff. But it's going to take a while to clean up that backlog.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlos. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
And Mr. Kelly, in terms of moving forward, I too share your concern about the size of the temporary employee budget. So as we go, a lot of it is really for bridging, in terms of it's going to take us time to hire individuals. They have to be trained. That takes an entire year. And so we'll be monitoring and reducing the temporary budget as we go. We have the ability to look at it at mid-year budget adjustments as well to see if there's any savings in that particular area. But I thought it was important for us to have that pool of money so that we can flex up or down depending on volumes that's coming in to the pension side of the shop. And so we will monitor it very closely. Ultimately, we would like to completely do away with temporary monies, but the seasonal nature of the workflow may prevent us from doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to highlight one of the points that Mr. Kelly made in the beginning that I totally agree with, which is that when including elements that were discussed in previous board actions, I would definitely highlight those as the reason behind it, such as an IT plan that was adopted by the board or a 100-day plan that was adopted by the board. That'd be helpful, I think, in seeing that line up with it. Okay, I have Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Just a couple of questions. Again, I'm one of the relative new guys. So just in terms of the cost, when I look at it, the rationale seems reasonable, but just from a kind of a best practices or benchmarking perspective, is there some other kind of external measure that lets us know whether we're relative to the fund size or whatever else? Are we staffing heavy? Are we staffing light? Is the nature of, say, our self-service or automation infrastructure sufficiently there? Or are we adding staff at a human cost to really make up for a deficiency in some aspect of the service that could be automated? Do we have any kind of external study or analysis or just kind of industry's best practices associated with pension fund operation that kind of informs us a little bit, so we have a better sense of kind of calibrating the growth of our headcount.
Yeah. I think JJ might be able to answer in terms of the benchmarking and how we stack up against the others pension funds. However, our operation is very, very different. We're kind of in a what's the word? We're in a transition period, quite frankly, where we're trying to make sure that we're able to process the work and serve our members to the best of our ability. We have some systems projects that have been lingering for quite some time. Case management system, for example, is a very, very good example. It's been on the books for about eight years. They've made some progress, but there's still some additional planning that needs to happen. We've set up some systems in order for us to evaluate new systems so that it will improve our productivity and will automate a lot of the handling of the documents. So we're still in the planning stages of that and trying to identify what the scope of work for that particular effort is. We've met with multiple vendors now, and we're in the process of selecting one, or actually going to an RFP or an RFI. Haven't really made up my mind yet to secure those particular efforts. We do, if I remember correctly, and JJ, you can help me, I know that the quality assurance folks, they do an annual benchmarking, but JJ might be able to help us with that explanation.
So LACERA participates in the CEM benchmarking program. CEM, I believe, stands for Cost Efficient Management. And so they survey pension funds throughout the world. They stratify funds based on size. LACERA is LACERA is unique. I mean, we're the largest county fund. So we often are put in the bucket with state funds. And sometimes I believe also in our bucket, there are some international, some of the international funds, which are country funds. So we're measured. I'm sorry, what was that, Mr. Keogh?
As sovereign funds.
Sovereign funds. Thank you very much. So there's some differences in scales of size and that we have. We place sometimes a little bit high on the scale. We also provide a higher level of service. We provide a higher count of interacting with members on an individual basis. I believe our communication to our members is higher than the peers in our group. And that's a lot of that is by choice. We spend a lot of time and effort on educating members and counseling members. The average retirement counseling session takes about an hour. And a lot of the other funds do rely on a lot of automation and self-service. And so we take a look at that, and we consider it based on what our goals and views are, and we make adjustments where appropriate or plans where appropriate. There is an internal initiative wherever possible to try and figure out how do we increase the ability for members to have self-service. But I want to balance that with the statement that we don't ever foresee ourselves giving up that one-on-one service. I mean, based on my belief and the belief that the board, the trustees have shared with me over the years, that is the key to what makes LACERA unique and special. We'll take the time with our members to make sure that they understand what their options are, understand what they're trying to do, and try and help them accomplish their goals. Some of the other systems, tend to, like I said, defer to more of a, self-service option. But we want to develop both so that we remain efficient.
Yeah, I would love to see, just because my professional background has been in the digitization of old brick and mortar stores, to a lot of things where people said at the time, well, people never won't want to go to the store to shop, or never, what I mean? Just understanding that there's also the great thing about this pandemic, if there is a great thing, is it's forced a lot of organizations to digitize in a way, right? Chipotle just reported their quarterly earnings yesterday, and most of their sales came through an app. Now, if you had asked the restaurateurs 5 years ago whether that would happen. And so I just want to make sure, just as an external kind of data point, would love to see what you're seeing in terms of that CEM survey, and whether or not, as the age of our retirees get to a point where most of their life has been digitized, right? Where, like, as a bank, if I don't have to talk to a banker, I'd rather not talk to a banker. I like do all my banking online. That we're kind of matching that and getting the operating leverage from a cost perspective is a benefit from doing that. So that was just thanks JJ for your response, but I would love to see some of the benchmarking stuff that you got
We'll arrange to do a presentation to probably the Operations Oversight Committee, and we'll make sure you know when that is, so you can come if you want, but we'll also provide the report.
Okay, thanks JJ.
I do want to say that, we have recognized that, and for example, we were forced to go virtual for our Member Services Center. That's the center where people used to come in and sit down one-on-one, face-to-face with a member. We've got great feedback that people enjoy the virtual. We also have feedback that people want to return to the one-on-one, face-to-face operation. So that's one example. We have gotten requests to be able to do things online. For example, make a purchase request online for purchasing previous service. Those are things that we are developing, and that's part of the infrastructure improvements that our technology side of the house wants to make. And so there's a whole focus from the organization to provide that, and give people greater opportunity. Another example is we now allow people to upload documents to us directly instead of mailing it to us. That's been very successful. So we are doing our best to digitize as quickly as we can while still balancing it for the other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're also working on, digitizing our own documents as well, making it available to our staff remotely. We were successful in doing that, which I think ultimately will help productivity once all the systems are in place. We're looking at a new call center system, for example, that will assist us with managing the calls and making sure that we record things properly and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that are happening and going on behind the scenes that I should do a better job of making sure that the board members know exactly where we are in those particular efforts. And I know that yesterday we had what I term as our IT council meeting yesterday, and that's going to assist us with developing better material for our board's consumption so that they know exactly where we are in the development of those new systems that are taking the millennials and the Gen Zers into consideration. And we want to make sure that we're preparing ourselves and the organization for that eventuality where most of the individuals have done everything online, and we'd like someone to be able to pick up their phone and hit an app and do all of their business transactions through LACERA. Behind the scenes, we have to verify things. We've come a long way with electronic signatures, for example. We're using that technology as well, which had been, a big leap for the organization. So I appreciate your comments, and we want to make sure that that we provide service to our members the way they want it to be provided to them.
Thank you. Great conversation. Mr. Bernstein, you're up next.
Thank you very much. I want to ask, in previous years, there have been years where we received multiple budget proposals. This year, we've only received one, and it's rather aggressive. I don't recall as large a proposed increase in my time here. And I'm wondering if any thought was given to providing multiple options as opposed to simply presenting this one budget.
Well, we had thought about that. We kind of took a different tack than we did last year. So if you recall last year, there was very limited number of positions that were added to the budget. I think there were like 2 or 3, quite frankly. And so at that point in time, when I came on board, I wasn't completely satisfied with the amount of information that I had in terms of the metrics and the volume, and I didn't have a really good grasp. So we presented a status quo budget. This year, we decided that we're going to take a different tack. We wanted this to be more of a workshop sort of conversation, so that that the direction I gave my staff was, okay, tell me exactly what you need in order to address the backlog issues, to address the succession planning issues, and tell me what you think you really need in order to put a dent in those particular areas that we're struggling in. And so what you're seeing is what my division managers believe they need in order to move the organization forward from a succession planning perspective, as well as to address all of the operational issues that we have. So like I said, we're in a transition period where we're trying to get new systems in place, but we're not quite there. And so we need the additional positions in order for us to process the volume that we're seeing. Things have changed significantly since last year. And so that's what's reflected here. In terms of options, that we could have given you we need 40 new positions, because that's initially what came in. I think there were a lot of positions that were asked for, and we kind of went through it with a fine-tooth comb and said, this is what we believe you really need, and this is what we're going to submit. We certainly can, putting together a budget is a incredibly, in our environment, it's very challenging, it's cumbersome. So I don't know, I don't believe that we would have been in a position to give you multiple options at this point in time, quite frankly. And so the answer to your question is no, we did not provide or thought about separate options, but we did consider separate options in our deliberations. So hope that helps.
Thank you. It helps, but I want to commend staff on doing an excellent job of answering the questions that were put to them. But I want to note that we are long overdue, and we've talked about this, for a strategic plan. And what concerns me is that this is an implementation of a strategic plan that we have not, as a board, been presented with or adapted. That it is very conclusive in what outcomes we want, including very good questions such as Mr. Jones touched on about automation versus high touch. It's a fantastic conversation, but we as a board haven't had it yet. And one thing that concerns me about this budgeting process is that it hasn't really invited in until late April, as much as I would have liked the board's input. I would tell you, and I'm a broken record on this for people who are old enough to remember records, we have a budgeting system that doesn't tell us what our actuals are. We are being asked to allocate money without a full report on how staff is able to spend the money during the year. From a budgeting point of view, that's very challenging. And it reflects very real challenges that this institution has. But this budget, as best I can see, is addressing other issues. It's not clearing up how do we get a more up-to-date, vibrant budget system. We have fantastic people, but we're hampered perhaps by staff and budgeting. Maybe we need more, but certainly by systems. That to me is a real issue. And I would also note that we're being asked to do a lot of permanent staffing. I think Mr. Kelly's concerns, I thought it took them, about temp spendings were simply that we're paying attention. I'm not sure for transitional work, given the obligations that LACERA takes on when we create permanent positions, that temp staffing isn't a better way to get through some of the transitions that we might be proposing. I would also note, Mr. Fryman, that you implemented something I thought was terrific, which was a mid-year review of the budget. We're being asked to front load every decision. We are not out of lockdown yet, very much, and yet we haven't taken any time to really say, what have we learned? What do we want to be going forward? How can we be better? And yet we're being asked to approve 21 permanent positions without even a full understanding of our outstanding permanent positions and where they're being. So this budget for me is challenging, but most fundamentally, I think it reflects a strategic plan that we haven't actually adopted yet. I may have more comments, but I'm very interested in hearing what other trustees have to say. So I will yield the Zoom, Mr. Chair, but those are some of my initial thoughts.
Thank you. I have Mr. Knox up next.
Thank you. I will gladly accept the Zoom. I wanted to thank Ms. Hines, you and your staff, certainly for all your hard work. I know how hard it is to put together a budget. So thank you for that. My questions were just, you mentioned the renovations, and I was looking, the 1.3 to renovate office spaces. You know, the biggest chunk of that is for systems. I recall touring systems a couple of years ago, and I thought it looked a little outdated and disjointed and not very modern. So based on that, you know, observation a couple of years ago, that makes sense. Just curious if we've budgeted enough, you know, because we're in this weird transitional phase where, yeah, we've implemented, and I was there yesterday, you know, taking a look at things, and you, like a lot of departments, did a great job of putting up plexiglass and, you know, all these accommodations to deal with social distancing of staff. But does our renovation budget anticipate a more full return to work of staff? Does the systems renovation budget, is that just, hey, we need a cubicle refresh? Or is it, no, this is really kind of a future look at how we want to deploy our system staff? And then my other concern would be, you know, we have some interim tags on our systems managers, and is it best for them to weigh in on what our future vision of systems looks like, or should it be our permanent systems managers when they come on board? So those were just some of my thoughts on renovations. You know, 200,000, I mean, the total number 1.3, you know, cap projects spend money like, you know, water coming out of a faucet. So it seems a little light, especially the 200 for unexpected renovations, just because we don't know what, we assume things are getting better. We don't know for certain. And I don't know if you anticipate keeping staff, you know, on a telework basis going forward. I know I am here. You know, we're gonna continue to offer telework at least 1 or 2 days a week for, you know, environmental, morale, family, work-life balance reasons. So it was more just an observation. I don't know if there's a perfect answer right now, Mr. Kryman, or just something to consider going forward. Yeah,
Um,
go ahead, Kim.
Actually, if I could just add, a big part of our renovation costs come from our tenant improvement allowance related to the building, the office of the building. So the amount you actually see in our administrative budget is for things like furniture and things like that. So in that sense, that's why you see a smaller amount there. And then as far as, and I'm sure Mr. Santos will answer, our plan for returning includes staff rotating, both doing telecommuting as well as in the office. And then Mr. Kryman can go into more detail on that.
Yeah, we do plan on having a hybrid work situation. One of the limitations that we have in terms of reducing our space, for example, is that the way we have to remote access into our computers, we have to have a computer for each individual, so it requires space to remote into. And so that is one issue that we're dealing with in terms of our space reconfigurations. The other is that the IT section, we do have some plans to rearrange how our project management group works and how they interact with one another, how they interact with our business units, for example, and how they develop the new systems that are moving forward. And so there will be some pretty significant renovations or changes to that area. As far as I'm concerned, we're need to be sensitive to the social distancing requirements. My preference would be everybody is in a bullpen, but that may have to change slightly as a result of the social distancing issues. So in terms of us waiting for the new permanent folks to come on board, because we do have interim tags on some individuals, I don't think we can afford to wait, quite frankly. I think we have to move forward with the strategic plans that we have in place. I think that there has been a lot of discussion internally about what the direction is. We had to move very quickly to move to a remote work environment. We're looking at developing the cloud for LACERA's own protection. There are specific initiatives that are ongoing that I'd like to move forward. The case management system, for example, has had a lot of discussion over the years, and I think there's a lot of really good ideas in there that we could move forward on. The budget system is another major initiative that we have to move forward, and that's accounted for in this particular budget as well. Our hope is that we'll have a new budget system for the next budget cycle, but it has to integrate with our fiscal side of the shop as well. So Mr. Granger and Ms. Hines are working very, very closely together to try to figure out, what system would work best for us and how it's integrated, how we can integrate it with our existing systems, or if we have to do something completely different. So I have a lot of confidence with the interim people that we have in place in our systems, as well as in our benefits section and in other areas of our organization. And so I would recommend that we move forward on that and not wait for someone new to come in. And of course, we'll take their suggestions into consideration as we move forward, but we'll integrate them into what we've already started.
Mr. Kramer, can you clarify, you said strategic plans that we have in place. Which strategic, because I thought hearing Mr. Bernstein's comments that was something that hasn't been adopted by the board. Do we have something adopted by the board?
I believe when I came on board a year and a half ago, I did read some strategic plans. I think that the thing that struck me is that there were strategic plans for individual divisions, as opposed to an overarching strategic plan, which I think is something that we need to do as an organization to address some of the concerns that Mr. Jones, for example, mentioned. We have to get on board and in lockstep with, how much personal service are we going to provide? How much, are we going to digitize and automate, and the security issues, and those are things that we're bringing back to the OOC for consideration. I think we started our first workshop or our first meeting on those the security elements, at least the last meeting in closed session. And so we're building these things so that we can ultimately come back to you as part of the offsite in October, hopefully, to present to you all a roadmap to move the organization forward, and so that we can get some buy-in for the overall strategic goals and initiatives. So we are following some of the projects, like I said, that were approved by this board in terms of moving forward. And it's really focusing in on getting that case management system implemented, quite frankly.
Okay, so I have some follow-up, but
Can I request that we get the strategic plan sent out to us before we vote to approve the budget?
Yeah.
Because I'm actually not aware of any current strategic plan, and I certainly would like the opportunity to review our strategic plan to confirm that the budget is achieving those objectives.
Okay.
And I have some follow-up, but I will respect the queue that we currently have going. So I have Mr. Oakham up next.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about page 22, the vacant positions. And it says we have 79 vacant positions. How many of those are temporary of the 79? Do we know that? Anybody know that answer? let me just continue, then maybe you can answer these questions. Secondly, of the 79 vacant positions, okay, last year I think we asked the same question. We wanted to see where we were through the budget as of, today. Because with those vacant positions, unless we have a lot of temporary, our salaries should be down drastically. And it would be helpful. I know we spent a lot more money on IT because of and other areas this year because of the pandemic. But we've got 79 vacant, but we're going to add 21 before we fill the vacant. Okay, we seem to be functioning pretty well now. Financial services is down 10, which is interesting. That's got to be a drag on them. Systems is down 24. Administrative is down 10, but we're adding 21 positions when we have 79 vacant. I know we're asking for things, but I think we need, and I think Alan and Sean are correct. We need to know where we are today before we can make a final decision. And I think we were in the same position last year at this time, when we went from, I forgot the number, we were at 100 million, but that was in the middle. We were about 95, 96 million. So we're really going up about $20 million, a little over 20%. So that's my thought process with these positions. And I would love to know how we're functioning with as many positions down in the areas that we're down in.
We can certainly provide you the next go around the estimate actuals. That was our intention when we go through the budget hearing process. So we will definitely provide you with the estimated actuals. Because of that.
So anybody have an idea how many temporary we have right now and how much more?
I see Dr. Ntoya also, if she wants to address some of that.
Carly?
Yes, good morning. Right now, out of the vacancies, all of them are permanent positions. The number of vacancies does not include temporary, well, because we don't include temporary positions, they don't include temporary positions. Temporary positions are not in our item control.
Yeah, but how many do we have? Temporary, do you know offhand?
Oh, temporaries,
yeah.
Okay.
Can you get that?
I don't happen to know offhand, but I can look that up very quickly.
Okay, great.
Do we consider the temps as a personnel item, or is it just simply a budgeted item?
They are not a personnel item, they are a budgeted item.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so we'll put that on the list for staff requests so that we can have that for the board. Okay, I now have Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, with regards, and thank you, staff, for the work you did in the budget. I seem to recall, Mr. Popovich, that at one point years ago, we used to get a table that will show the budgets for several years. I just don't remember how many years we used to go back, and we kind of used it to compare where we have been and where we are right now.
Yes.
I think that's what some of my colleagues are making reference, and certainly will appreciate that table in the future. Now, with regards to a strategic plan, Mr. Kryman, one of the things that I would like to suggest is that we should develop a strategic plan for the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps. As you know, right now we vacillating around $70 billion. We're scheduled to go hit up to $100 billion in another 5-7 years. And it's interesting to see. 16 years ago, when I first got elected, we were at 23 billion, and right now we are flirting with 70 billion, and that was predicted. There's no surprise, and there's not going to be a surprise when we could hit 100 billion. And I remember Mr. Grable at one point when we first hired him. that he said to us, that we still operating like if we were a $23 billion fund. And I believe at the time that Mr. Grable made that statement, we were close to 50 billion. So, and that to me was resonated a great deal because we continue to grow, and this as well as the membership, right? Because the county it continues to hire, even though we're in a hiring freeze, but they had made exemptions because it's important in order for us to operate, us meaning the county. The projections are that the U.S. economy is going to grow by anywhere from 6 to 10% in the next few years. So that means the county is going to continue to grow. More people are going to retire. So our responsibility is going to continue to grow. So I think that it will be a good idea to have those discussions with the strategic plan. It's what plans we have, what strategic plan do we have today, and what are we planning for the future? I think it's really important that we do that. I was listening to the chairman, Jay Powell, the other day when he was being interviewed in 60 Minutes. And one of the things that he said, which I thought was very interesting, in addition to his reports about the economy and the fact that he predicts somewhere 6 to 7% GDP growth in the US. But he said that cyber security or cyber criminality is big issue, or one of his biggest concerns that we all need to be worried about. And certainly we have to think about that, because we have highly confidential information and we have a lot of money that we're managing. And couple that with the latest report that I received, and I think it was published in P&I, with what happened in Coppers, where an employee or a couple employees, I'm not sure how many employees were involved, were able to steal from the fund, I believe it was close to $1 million, if I remember correctly. So not only that we have the concerns with the cybersecurity, but also internally, we need to be concerned and prepared to deal with and hopefully prevent it. So that's in terms of strategic planning. That's what I would like to see, to be able to have those discussions and what type of planning are we doing when we get up to, as we get up to $100 billion. Like Mr. Ocom, I'm concerned with the vacant position 79. I think I brought that issue before. It's really concerning when I see that we operating with 79 vacant positions. We need to make sure that we fill those positions. We need to figure out what's holding that. It's at our end. I remember a couple of years ago, I was concerned with some of the vacant positions, and when I questioned why we haven't been able to, I think it was regarding internal audit, and one of the managers blamed HR blamed the manager. So anyway, it was just chaotic, and we need to make sure that we figure out how we're going to fill those vacancies. And I think somebody's objecting to my comments. And so those are the points that I have. Oh, the one last one that I'm not sure if it's relevant here or not, but it's something that we need to think about. I know we had a discussion a couple of board meetings ago, I believe, at the Board of Retirement, of the possibility to, I think it was Mr. Bernstein's request, I'm not sure, with regards to the possibility of moving the elected trustees, and perhaps some of the appointees to be budgeted by LACERA. I know the staff is looking into that. The question is, do we need to think about budgeting right now for that, or perhaps in the future? But that's something that I would like to see a report on in the near future. Thank you.
So can I just make a couple of comments on that?
Yeah.
So we completely agree with you in terms of looking at LACERA and developing a multi-year strategic plan. The last plan that I saw, at least when I came on board, was approved in 2019, I believe. The 100-day report helped, quite frankly, through the pandemic to kind of focus our efforts on the cybersecurity issues that you mentioned, restructuring the IT section, separating the CISO from the IT folks. And so we're moving forward with those particular elements that were incredibly important for us to deal with. Now, in terms of the strategic plan, I need to let you know that, Mr. Grable and I have had discussions about what it means to go from allocator to investor. And so our strategic plan has to make sure that we support Mr. Grable in that particular effort, because that is definitely a clear direction that has been provided to him and his staff and to LACERA as a whole. So, Mr. Grable and I will be working very, very closely in the development of the strategic plan to make sure that we're supporting him in what he needs to do to move the fund forward in the vision that the trustees have provided him, and that he's done an excellent job of implementing a lot of those particular elements. So it has to, whatever we do on the pension side or the administration side needs to make sure that we support him in everything that we do. Now, I don't think that there's anyone more frustrated than an HR person when they can't get people onto the payroll. They work incredibly hard, and they're trying to keep up with the pace, and we do have some capacity issues there. But because of the lack of hiring over the previous years, but we have a plan in place. We are going to present a hiring plan on the IT side, which is the majority of our vacancies, to the board, either in sometime in May. And so we'll lay out the hiring plans for all of these particular vacancies, and we're in the process of moving forward to try to hire them as quickly as we possibly can. But there is a time lag, and there are certain capacity issues, and Ms. Natoya has been doing a really good job of trying to figure out how do we move things forward with either internal staff or using some other outside consultants and assets to help us promulgate these exams. The hiring on the operations side has been hampered by the pandemic. So a lot of the exams that we had for our retirement benefits people, for example, the county would assist us with those proctoring of those exams, if I remember correctly, because they had to take tests and they had to do certain elements of the exam process, and we used HR, DHR to do that. They have not, at this point in time, been able to figure out how to do that remotely. And so the direction that Carly actually made a recommendation, and we're moving forward where we're going to change how we're doing that particular process, where we're going to proctor those exams ourselves, and then we're going to have to develop new testing actually after we burn these particular testing applications and processes, because they'll be for a number of variety of reasons. And so we had a lot of attrition this year as well on the operations side. And so that's why you see the volume of positions, vacant positions going up. But we do have a plan to try to get that in place. Things have been delayed. For no fault of anyone's. It's just the pandemic really has set us back with a lot of the strategic planning processes that we wanted to put in place. Some of the reporting that we need to do with the board, the interactions that we have to have with you all. But now that things are settling down and we're in a groove, quite frankly, we have the ability to kind of break off on the emergent needs and start doing more of that, what I call quadrant 2 thinking, which is the planning and the development of these very, very important vision documents and strategic documents. So hopefully that helps. And in terms of the budgeting for the possibility of electeds or other trustees being incorporated in the budget, at this point in time, I would recommend that we don't do that. We could take care of that in a mid-year budget adjustment if that does come into fruition. Those are my thoughts on your questions.
Thank you. So I have some comments, and then Mr. Kelly will be next in the queue, and then Mr. Bernstein. And I also got a breaking news that we have 40 temps for the organization. So we have 40 temps to answer Mr. Oakham's question. So my just a couple of things based on the comments. We're at my back of the napkin math is 17% vacancy for the organization. So that's a pretty high vacancy factor. And we're actually going to be voting, if we approve this budget, to increase that vacancy factor. In addition to that, I appreciate the comments by Mr. Santos regarding cybersecurity. In fact, if anybody knows anything about the way federal government helps push local government to put priorities first, the #1 grant funding reason is cybersecurity. So they are pushing cybersecurity because they want local governments to focus on that as well. So definitely an issue, that something that we should be looking at in the strategic budgeting process. So my initial reaction when I saw this budget was, wow. I took a step back. This is probably the largest budget increase that I've ever seen coming across our desk. I have 11 years down with the board. I definitely agree. I think Ms. Hines' shop does an amazing work on this. This is not an easy process. I have been involved in this throughout my career on the department, so I totally understand the difficulties. So please don't take any of myself, and I'm going to speak for the rest of the board, any of our comments or questions or pushback as anything negative about any staff work. I think that all of these are opportunities for improvement, and I think that this is just simply we need to start looking at doing this a different way. And what I'm hearing is I'm hearing a budget process that's driving strategic priorities. And I think that's backwards. I think that we need to have strategic priorities that are driving a budget process. And I think the issue is that we just simply haven't, as an organization, sat down and developed those strategic planning processes. And there's multiple parts of that. We are such a diverse organization in so many different ways. I am going to give a shout out to the BOI and to Mr. Grable. I think that the Board of Investments does have a strong focus on putting together priorities which push the budget. That's one component, but we definitely need to get better in other areas, specifically IT side of the shop, and then also just across the board for the organizational goals. And I think that there's a lot of great questions from a number of trustees that staff can use to help develop that process on how we go through the strategic planning process. And I understand we've had a pandemic, and this has been a very rough year. And I also understand, Mr. Kryman, you're still learning everything over here. I mean, you're going on a year, but we can't use any of those as excuses. We got to move forward with it. So that's my overall top looking down view on everything. And I think that we got to get there sooner rather than later. This is now, I think, the third budget cycle that there's been significant pushback from the board. So that's Mr. Kryman, one thing to keep in mind, that this is not, new. This has been concerns that this board has brought up over and over again, and it doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere other than we're continuing the status quo. And I think that we need to just, jump in and get this thing going. However we do it virtually, we do it in person, whatever the case is. I think that this board, both jointly and individually, needs to get behind a process, and the budget needs to reflect that. That was some great questions where the budget should say we are adding these items consistent with the strategic plan goal number 478, right? Because that answers that question. And I believe the Board of Supervisors implemented a similar process on it. Every single board letter that goes before the board addresses what the strategic planning goals, why we're doing what we're doing. So that's definitely something that we need to get into. At a micro level, I mean, there's things like the great discussion on the employees versus the automation. Every single employee we should look at as a 40-year commitment. That's a longer commitment than anything that the Board of Investments does on any of their investments. Yet we're saying, okay, we're going to hire this person. They're going to have a 40 year. In 40 years, is the job that they're doing going to be relevant anymore? Those are things that we have to look at and analyze before we do it. And we're definitely not saying, hey, let's take away from customer service. I agree with JJ's comments. I think LACERA is outstanding as far as customer service. We have our issues every now and then, but we get through them. Compared to any other pension plan out there, and I'll say it, I'll go on record, I think that we are the top-notch best customer service out there. And I think it's great. But that doesn't mean that things behind the scenes can't actually get better through automation, can't get better through improving our processes behind the scenes. We can always keep our front end connection. But behind the scenes, I think we could do things to help support not only staff, but also the members of the organization. So those are things that we should look at. Those are my comments. Here's both my question and also what I would like to direct staff to do is, number one, I'd like any and all documents that are driving the budget process to be provided to not only this committee, but the board. So there's been a number of things thrown out there, the IT plan, the OOC's discussion stuff. In my opinion, unless it's a joint approved item or something approved by the Board of Retirement as a whole, it should not be a driving force. A comment by Mr. Kehoe about that I like the color blue on the walls should not be something where you change the budget to reflect repainting the whole building. That's not a board approved item. It should be specifically board approved items. So I would like any and all those documents, even ones that you're using that aren't board approved, if you could just give it to us so that we understand where you're coming from. And then on that same note, we keep referencing the 100-day plan, and I know that there's a lot of effort that was put into the 100-day plan. I actually don't remember our board, and I could be off on my memory, but I don't remember our board actually voting to adopt the 100-day plan as either a strategic planning process or as a something that the board even fully approved. So if you can answer that question for me on if we did approve it, and then also if you can get that out to everybody as well, I would appreciate. I think all the trustees should have that once again for us to look at. So I'll leave it at that. I think I know it's a lot because May's next month, and there's a lot of issues and concerns. So I honestly don't know how all this stuff is going to work out. I think that that there's a high bar to get this approved as written, and we may want to look at scaling back some stuff until we're at a point where you have the full board behind you, pushing you to do some of these budget adjustments rather than the how I perceive it as the other way around. So those are my comments and questions. I'll give an opportunity for Mr. Kryman or anybody from staff to address them before we move on.
JJ, did you want to make a comment?
No, I hear what the trustees are saying, and we'll discuss it and figure out how we adjust things to provide what you need to help us move things forward.
Yeah. So, Mr. Keogh, I appreciate your comments, and I completely understand and agree that everything that we are presenting from a budget perspective should flow from some strategic initiative that has been approved by the board. Budget is a fickle thing, quite frankly, and some of the areas that we address sometimes will not be included as part of the strategic planning effort because it has to do with operational issues that we're facing and in real time, quite frankly. And so I want you to understand, and everyone to understand, that this particular budget was really based on a lot of the strategic initiatives that we had. The 100-day report did provide some guidance, especially in the IT area with cybersecurity and those other elements that you mentioned are really critical and important. And so those things had to be implemented very, very quickly. And I think we did a really good job of getting us ready to work in this hybrid and remote work environment. The budget that you see before you is really based on some strategic areas, as well as the operational challenges that we're facing, that my staff and my division managers are identifying. And I know that you as a division manager at the Sheriff Department appreciate those particular areas. And sometimes I think, there's a lot of head scratching that goes on when headquarters, so to speak, doesn't approve of your particular request on budget items. And so we try to be sensitive not only to the strategic initiatives that the board wants to move forward and what has been approved, but I also wanted to be sensitive to what my division managers believe that they needed in order to continue operating at the high level that you all are accustomed to and that our members deserve. And so we will provide you with all the documentations that you need. We'll be more than happy to meet with you all to discuss those areas and how it incorporates into the budget request. It's going to take us a little bit of time because I'll be really honest with you that we didn't tie one specific strategic goal or objective to the budget request, so we're going to have to do that so that it makes it easier for you all to identify what we're following, why we're following it, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of work to do between now and the next time we meet. There may be a possibility that we'll ask for a JOG-C meeting, an extra one, before we actually go to the budget hearings, because I think that might be valuable as well. So those are my comments, and I appreciate everybody's comments. And I think if there's any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
So I just have a little bit of pushback on one of the comments. So number one, I think the budgeting process isn't necessarily for us, it's actually for you and for the organization. It's for the success of the organization, not just to make the trustees happy. We're asking these questions because we want to make sure that what we're approving is going to meet the well thought out goals of the organization. So it's not just for us. But the pushback that I have is you mentioned that there are budget items that don't align with the strategic plan goal. And I think I have to take a step back on that and say, I don't think that there's ever a budget expense that doesn't tie into a strategic plan goal. And if that's the case, then it's something that we shouldn't be spending money on. It's akin to every single board letter that goes to the Board of Supervisors has a tie into a strategic plan goal. I cannot imagine a letter going to the Board of Supervisors saying, we're asking for this, but there's no strategic plan goal, not applicable. That would even make it past the CAR meeting to get to the Board of Supervisors. So I do think you need to reevaluate that. And, even if it is for pencils, it's for organizational efficiency, right? Pencils help you get things done. So we do have to tie in. I think that this is just a refocus on the reason that we spend money in the organization and the reason that we budget. Money is a tool to get the job done, and we need to explain and tie in all of that. So that's my comments. I have Mr. Kelly next, and then followed by Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you. So I am most concerned, getting back to this issue of strategic plan, which was the first question I started with. I'm most concerned with the IT area. Many years ago, I met the president of Citibank, who said he was an IT operation with a banking license. I mean, everything these days is IT. So I'm really focused on the IT area. I really liked Mr. Bernstein's suggestion of kind of implementing this in 2 phases, if you will, which is kind of a basic budget and then a mid-year adjustment. I think in terms of strategic planning, if the most recent board adopted strategic plan is 2019, you should have an agenda for sometime this coming year to develop a new strategic plan, because it's 2021. And I think IT has the priority there in my mind. But getting back to the IT positions, there's a lot of reference in here to the Board of Supervisors taking action. And when I last left the board in 2019, that was still pending. So what is the status of the board approving these ordinance IT positions?
The Board of Supervisors?
Yes.
We have had, or I have had ongoing conversations with the CEO about those particular positions. I can't say that that we've made that we have an understanding. I think that there's still questions about the Board of Supervisors asserting their what they perceive as their authority over the ordinance versus our plenary authority to administer the program. So I don't believe that the positions at this particular point have changed, that our independence is our independence. I think that the discussions that I've had with FIJA nonetheless have been positive and constructive. I don't believe that we're trying to figure out whether or not there's a pathway forward, or if it's ultimately the path is going to lead us to litigate till we can clear this up. It won't be a contentious litigation. It's just, we just need a third party to really tell us exactly what our authority is and what the board's authority is based on the 2 separate positions. So the positions have not changed.
So we're no closer than we were in 2019 than when I left, but yet you're budgeting for these positions to be ordinanced and for them to be hired, et cetera.
That's correct, because they're critical. And I believe
that we don't have them.
Correct. They are critical positions for us, and we need the positions, and that's what we're imploring with the CEO. And so we're going to have a closed session meeting item on this particular issue in the not too distant future.
It could be another reason to carve out the IT positions, develop a focused strategic plan, and then come back with the positions that are supported by a strategic plan. We never underwent that exercise, so I don't, unless you did in the last 2 years, but I'm not hearing that. With board involvement, because we don't know if those positions are the strategic plan or not. I think so. Anyway, those are my comments. But I think strategic plan is important. I wanted to acknowledge Mr. Bernstein's suggestion about kind of a 2-phase approach here, because I thought it was an excellent one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I have Mr. Bernstein up next.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. I want to go out on a limb here. I don't think we have a strategic plan, and I am concerned as chair of our administrative board that the CEO and I don't agree on that. I think we have strategic initiatives. I think we have policies that have been adopted. I don't recall adopting a strategic plan. And I will continue, as we all will, to commend staff on their excellent work. But I also need to commend my fellow trustees on our excellent work and on the great effort people have made throughout this pandemic to stay involved and engaged and active. And I would note, as someone who's been here for quite a while and who I think can read a room reasonably well, it is rare to see this much agreement among trustees. What I'm hearing consistently is a passion for our organization, for our organizational success, for our commitment to our members. And what I'm hearing is a great deal of concern about the lack of an existing strategic plan to drive funding initiatives. So what I would specifically like to suggest is, and I would note that we're discussing a preliminary budget, but we all know that in a few weeks, we're going to be asked to approve a budget. Preliminary is a very wobbly term when there aren't really any more bites at the apple before we're asked to budget. I don't want to hold spending. There are things in this budget that are clearly justified in existing policy. And I don't want to wait until January to approve things. But the fundamental question that we seem to be struggling with is, how high touch do we want to be? Everyone wants the member experience to be fantastic. But as Mr. Jones noted, other people have noted, people like uploading documents. People like not having to go into their branches. This isn't about whether we please or punish our membership. It's about how we best serve them. And that absolutely, in my opinion, requires board input. And as Mr. Kehoe put it, Chair Kehoe, it's not by one person saying that this is a good idea. It's by voting on something. I would really appreciate seeing a budget brought to us for approval that scales back what is effectively implementation of a non-adopted strategic plan. And I would like us to push forward as aggressively as we can on making some of those strategic decisions so that we can feel good about funding it. I'm not opposed to spending $15 million more. I serve on the Board of Investments. We spend a lot more than that every month on worthy things. It's the lack of having an actual validation from the boards that this is the direction that staff should be going in. That's proper process for this kind of a situation, and it is currently not in place. So please have us approve the things that are required, the increases in salary, the things that we've already agreed to. But let's have a quick, robust, effective conversation among the boards on how we want the organization to be strategically moving forward.
We are going to take all of the input that we received from this meeting into consideration when we represent the proposed budget. Those items that we believe we can defer until mid-year budget adjustment when we've gone through a strategic planning process. And quite frankly, an organization of this size and complexity going through a strategic planning effort over a 6-month period is very, very difficult. Strategic planning normally takes, I would say between 9 months to a year, maybe even more than a year. But we're going to do everything that we possibly can to kind of to move it forward as quickly as we possibly can. So we are going to go through it, take a look at those items that we can defer to the mid-year budget adjustment. There are specific positions that I do need you to take into consideration. That retiree healthcare, for example, those and anything that's related to our operational side, in my humble opinion, my recommendation, they do need to move forward because we have to train these individuals, and I don't want to have 2 separate trainings for a class. So I need to train them and hire them all at the same time so they can go through the training process together. We have had tremendous amount of discussions with Cassandra on the retiree healthcare side. She needs those positions, quite frankly, and it's nothing. It has to do with the, how the Medicare and process flows, right? How they receive the applications and how they have to process them. So there are going to be operational issues, and that's what I was referring to in terms of my comment about not all the issues being related to a strategic plan. I was thinking more of objectives and goals. There are operational issues that come up, and retiree healthcare happens to be one of those issues that is really struggling in terms of processing because of the way the workflow comes in. And so we will go back, we'll take a look at it again. What I wanted to present to you was what my division managers believe they need in order to move the organization forward from an operational perspective to address backlog issues.
And yet, to some degree, Mr. Kryman, what you have presented is your staff's interpretation of a strategic plan that these boards have not adopted. I can't be any more clear or direct in my concern that I'm not sure these boards want to fund an unadopted strategic plan. Everybody wants the organization to succeed. Everybody takes pride in the organization, but funding unapproved initiatives is very close to the line for some people and over the line for some people. Maybe other people are fine with it, but I haven't heard that in the hour and a half that we've been meeting.
Mr. Bernstein, the items that we're asking for are not for new initiatives. They're for our ongoing challenges that we have for our existing workload and processing. That's what this budget is. It really is addressing those backlogs that we didn't address last budget period because we were not comfortable, or at least I wasn't comfortable with the information that I had at hand. I did read the strategic reports that they prepared in 2019 in the development of that budget. The 100-day report did help with focusing in, like I said, the IT issues that we had needed to address because of the pandemic. Okay, so these are not new initiatives. These are things that had been approved by the board before. We've had ongoing discussions with the systems that we need to move forward. And so the strategic planning that you're talking about is what that future vision is going to be. If that's what we're talking about in terms of strategic vision, what Mr. Jones is talking about, dealing with the millennials and the Gen Zers that are going to retire soon, that's a strategic planning effort that we certainly need to do. The other issue that we have to do is we have to look at our existing strategic plan, the 2019 plan, which we have not done, and say, okay, which one of these particular objectives and action plans have we implemented? That we have not done. And I think that's what we're asking, that's what you're asking for in terms of reconciling the 2019 plan and then determining what we've accomplished, what still is outstanding, and how does the budget that's prepared this year flow into that? And so that's what we have to do. We have to go back, take a look at those plans, and mark them for you so that you can see it. You can see for yourselves that yes, we've done these things. The 2019 strategic plan, I wasn't involved in the development of that plan, so I don't know exactly how it was put together, what sort of input you all had, what process went through. I'm not sure. So I'm going to have to go back to JJ and some of the individuals that were here in the development of that 2019 plan to learn that. We hear you loud and clear. We understand we need a strategic direction. We need a vision. We need to have those discussions. They're valuable discussions. How are we going to deal with cybersecurity? How are we going to deal with the restructuring of our IT division? Do we need to restructure in our benefits section? What are we going to do about the databases that are antiquated? For example, what new platforms are we going to have? Those are the discussions that we have to have, but we have not been able to do that over this last year. And so I apologize for that. But I hear you loud and clear. This budget, I just want to make sure, is to address the challenges that we have for the backlogs and processing of the work that we have now. That's what this budget request is. It's not a status quo budget because there's additional positions that we need, but that is the purpose of this particular budget request.
And I don't think anybody is arguing against the necessity of potentially filling these items other than the fact that we don't appear to, and I think that that we're hearing loud and clear that we don't have a strategic reason or a strategic budget plan or the reason why we're actually spending these monies. So regardless of 2019, regardless of this now, I think every penny that we spend needs to be tied into doing something within the organization, even if that is filling a hole or a gap. But what it sounds like is essentially we're just dealing with a bunch of little problems all at once, and we don't really have a strategic vision behind it. And quite frankly, Mr. Kryman, that's your job to lead that charge and to present it to this board and to get the support from this board to do exactly that. So I think you can understand why there's considerable concern about it. And this is not a new issue. This is an ongoing problem. And I would even argue back in 2019, it was an issue. So I think I appreciate that you hear it and you hear it loud and clear. But I think what you have to do is analyze what you're going to do. What is priority one to deal with right now and make that case to this board with this budget? And then what can be put to the side and looked at in the future and incorporated in a budget plan. So I have.
Finish.
Oh, Mr. Bernstein, I'm sorry. I didn't know you had additional follow-up.
Mr. Kryman, I think to add to what Chair Keogh just said, I think you'll find that my no vote in 2019 reflected almost exactly the same concerns about the budget that I'm recognizing in 2021. I'm actually not entirely used to having my comments analyzed so much as a trustee. I'm used to just making them. But I think that what I said stands for itself. And I think it reflects a fairly accurate summation of the concerns that I heard from basically every trustee who has spoken. So what staff does with that is up to you. How I vote ultimately is up to me, but I stand by what I said. I think it reflected my fiduciary responsibility to LACERA, my love of LACERA, and my concern about putting the cart in front of the horse. That's all, Chair Kehoe.
Thank you. I have Mr. Jones up next.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Chairman Keogh. I agree in terms of there's clearly a near-term operational budget, which I think that needs to be broken out from the process, right? So that because I get your need for, hey, these things are kind of on fire at the moment and require some investment or allocation of resources to put that out. But I do think as a relatively new board member here that it's, and let me shift the energy a little bit. So I think it's a great opportunity is what we're asking for, right? There's a great opportunity. A lot of assumptions and ways we used to think about business and allocations of investments in terms of our business pre-pandemic have changed by necessity, right? And so it presents a whole opportunity to think differently as we think about the next 5 years. And perhaps when we say strategic plan, we really should be saying something that covers a 5-year time span. What do we think are going to be the large macro issues, workplace-wise, workforce-wise, IT-wise, all that type thing? Let's try our best in 2021 to kind of be prognosticators and say, here are some of the large things that we can begin on an annual basis, taking steps and prioritizations to. And my experience, again, as a former management consultant, particularly during the onset of the internet and all the different disruptions and assumptions people made at the time, was there's always that tension between the attention to the legacy systems and things that operate, and then the tension between kind of the future and what that takes, right? Even the person that you may be hiring today to address a legacy issue may be totally unfit for, you know, the IT person that's doing something on the client server side today, may be wholly unfit for the cloud-based position that you want to have, you know, 2-3 years from now. So I think the board, and I think this is where we make a contribution to a larger organization, has a lot of different other business experience, industry experience around this type of strategic plan conversation that leads to forward-looking transformation. And I think what you hear Alan and Sean, and again, I'm new to the voice and weighing in, is saying, hey, we think we have something to add. We'd like to work with staff in thinking about what that looks like, and then make sure that the budget decisions we're making prioritizes that that vision and then hold the annual budgeting process kind of accountable towards that movement. And I just think right now, and I appreciate Linda sending me the 100-day report. So I got some nice evening reading over a glass of wine and a cigar tonight for that. And then I'll try and get my hands on the 2019 plan as well. But I think I just sense that we all want to sing from a robust sheet of music, but I don't think we all kind of know what are we singing from, right? What is it that we're trying to get to? So I just want to shift the energy a little bit and say this is not really so much a criticism as much as saying how do we improve the level of enrollment and input in a way that we all get a chance to kind of say, yes, this is what we think LACERA 2026 looks like. And we trusted the staff that if we approve the resources and the leadership of the staff makes the type of decisions, we can get there in a way that better serves our members and meets our fiduciary duty. So that's really my comment there. Just kind of echoing that this isn't a critical process or critical feedback just for criticism's sake, but I think we're just trying to reopen and reframe the idea that I think there are a lot of new things that we've learned over the last 12 months that I think if we have a broader, more enrolled conversation around it, and it doesn't have to necessarily take a year, you know what I mean? Like from a strategic planning process, if we need to hire an outside facilitator to make it easier to kind of get to, let's do that. It might be worth a half day type thing to do that, but I think it's necessary to kind of bring more unity to the type of things you care about, and I think the things that the board cares about.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ms. Greenwood in the queue.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I have a couple of comments. First of all, I was welcome Mr. Jones to this board. Thank you to Mr. Kryman and to staff for putting this together. Putting a budget together is insanely complicated and quite difficult to narrow down what each department wants. Second, I would like to say in my 12 years of being a pension trustee, my bias is towards granting departments the staffing requests that they ask for, because they are the people that are on the ground and they know what they need to do and how many people they need to have in order to get the job done. We absolutely need a whole set of strategic plans on many different areas. Because I have been here as long, I think Mr. Kryman got here 6 weeks before I did, I can understand a lot of the challenges that he's facing right now, because you've got the job, you're learning the job, and then we got hit with a pandemic. And so the entire internal structure of the organization is now out the window and getting restructured. So last year it was impossible to deal with setting up strategic plans that were not here when he got here, because he was busy figuring out how to manage an organization that was now largely off-site, how to set up that off-site, how to manage the organization once the off-site was established, and then how do you quell the fires as they come up. Having to address a couple of people that talked about strategic plans. In my previous position, we had strategic plans and we already in place, and we would spend 2 to 3 months on each one, just on a rotating basis, making sure that we still wanted it where it was, had the strategic plan finished. It can be a torturously long process to first establish it and then decide whether or not we have met our goal or want to continue and therefore tweak that individual plan. I appreciate your eagerness. I don't think it can be done in a meeting. That has not been my experience, although my experience is not the only experience. Certainly. I want to thank staff and thank Mr. Kryman. I think if they have identified holes that need to be filled, we should fill the holes. I also think that along the same track, we should absolutely sit down, that the chairs should sit down with Mr. Kryman and outline the beginnings of a strategic plan. And then that should be put on either the agenda for this committee or on the agenda for the joint board meeting or on the individual boards. Or doing something in that order. I do not think, since we are currently in a budget process, and while I want to let the folks who have spoken before me and complained about the lack of a strategic plan, I want to 100% back you up because we should have it. My response to you is, let's do it. And I mean, yes, we don't have it now. Let's do it now. And I have no problem and don't see any problem with going down both roads simultaneously. So thank you all for your time, and that's it for me.
Okay, next up, we have Mr. Robbins.
Les, you're muted.
I'm pretty much in agreement with the comments that were just made. You know, when I think back to 2017, 18, 19, and then the year that was just a lost year, 2020, this organization had a lot of things going on that I'm sure got in the way of staff being able to put together an effective, viable strategic plan. I mean, we went through 2 CEOs and all kinds of other stuff. So I think there were a lot of distractions that kept the organization from moving forward on some areas. I share Alan's concern about a strategic plan, but I also agree with Mr. Kryman. We're not going to crank one out in 6 months either. I also feel that we need to plug this budget and get the items in here that staff needs, because I know that retiree healthcare cannot function in the future the way that it's functioned in the past without filling these items, because the world of retiree healthcare, and Mr. Jones, that's one of the functions that this pension plan does that very few others do, is we administer a retiree healthcare plan for 60,000 people. And that entire environment has become incredibly more complex with all the federal rules and regulations and the ACA and the reporting and everything else. But I'm sitting here trying to figure out where all of the pieces of the puzzle come together with the board members. And like I said, I share Alan's concerns, but I don't think that we can hold this budget hostage because we don't have a strategic plan. I want one too. And speaking of a strategic plan, I don't know how in the hell we move forward with a strategic plan when it comes to systems until we solve our little problem, the elephant in the room, i.e. the County of Los Angeles, continuing with their position of telling us what we can do and what we can't do. Our plenary and fiduciary responsibilities in these areas are clear. And I don't see, we're not going to go over there and solve this problem amicably. I think that ought to be pretty apparent now. So I think we get out the big guns and we go do what we started to do 2.5 years ago and get it done. Because I don't know how we move forward with all of the systems things that Mr. Kryman is wanting to do, and that I think the board feels is absolutely essential, until we can figure out how we're going to get this problem solved with us being able to hire who we need and pay them whatever it is we have to pay them to bring in the people that we need to have and be able to keep them afterwards. So having said that, I'll shut up, but I hope we can find some middle ground here and get this all done, because I know we cannot do a strategic plan from scratch in 3 or 6 or 9, you know, maybe be a year's project, but and it's important, but this budget's more important.
Yeah, and we definitely don't want to rush job. We want this done right and well. Okay, I have Miss Gray followed by Gina and Herman. So Miss Gray.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for all the hard work they've done and Mr. Kryman for steering the vessel to move this forward. One thing I have to say is that we have not been, we've not been stagnant even during 2020. We have continued to move forward. Even our investments have continued to move forward in light of the market volatility. We have sustained it all. Now, the one thing that I want to say is I agree totally with Ms. Greenwood and Mr. Robbins. The lack of a strategic plan does not make approval of this budget contingent on that lack of strategic plan. We have to know, and we have to have direction. We need to know our course. That's obvious, but we cannot plan it in 4 weeks when the budget needs to be approved. So I would say this, Mr. Kryman was hired with a lot of confidence in his abilities, which he has demonstrated over the last few months consistently with respect to what this organization needs, what he can do with this organization, but most importantly, what he can do with this organization in continuing our sustainability, our relevancy, and also the ability to move forward. And he's also explained to us when they did the budget approvals and discussions, in essence, he did not have that quote strategic plan, but he was able to steer discussions, decisions with a plan in mind. And that is moving forward LACERA, number one, keeping us relevant and within the time that we need. Mr. Jones talked about digitization. That's a mouthful, Mr. Jones, but that is a possibility. I, as an older person, hate having to upload documents, etc. It never works for me. It takes a long time. It is not expedient. I'd rather get in my car and drive to LACERA. However, we do need to remain in the 21st century. And I think that approving the budget to move it to the boards is what we should do. And Mr. Santos and staff, Mr. Kryman and staff should be able to begin with the boards working on a strategic plan, a good strategic plan that can last us at least for the next 5 years with looking at our legacy in mind. So I don't know if this is the proper time, but I would make a motion, because there is no motion here. I would make a motion to approve the budget as submitted.
I would mark that as out of order. Unfortunately, this is a report and not an action item. So
Okay.
this is simply.
I thought it was an action item. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ms. Sanchez up next, followed by Mr. Santos.
Well, my comments are going to come. I'm now echoing every comment that's just come before me, but it's worth, I think, kind of highlighting that we have been through multiple CEOs in a very brief period for an organization. And I think were it not for the pandemic, we probably would have been going down the road of building that strategic plan. And I agree, I've been a part of board strategic planning exercises, and they take an extraordinary amount of time, and they're a constant work in progress. And the only way you can do it, as Liz mentioned, is to take it in bite-sized chunks, which lasts over months. And so, you know, I think that we also kind of have to remember that our job is to be strategic and not be over tactical. And much of what we're talking about are tactical needs that are required now to sort of accomplish our primary mission. And so unless you just really strongly believe that there's something that is out of order with regard to our primary mission, I don't. I look at what has been presented, and these are tactical needs, and absent a strategic plan, we must assume that our plan, that our main mission is our main mission, and that and I agree that that we should have one. that it's a process we should go through. And I think that Mr. Kryman has certainly heard from everybody that this is something that we need to do. And I honestly believe that we would be farther along the line if we hadn't been sort of separated from each other for so long, and having to deal with a lot of existential issues like how do we keep people connected and how do we safeguard our data, and issues like that we really had to confront very quickly and very aggressively. And how do we service our client base, many of whom don't naturally want to do things like upload documents. So, that all of those issues are, as Mr. Kehoe said, they're things that happened. They're not excuses, but they did actually happen. And I think that we are in a position to sort of continue our mission going forward. I believe that we should begin a process for how to do that, and that should involve all the boards, not just this subgroup, and that what we get at the end of that may not look different from our mission, but it would probably bring a lot of comfort as to what we're doing. And I think it's a trust building exercise at the end of the day. And that's what really we kind of have to get into the business of doing here at the board level, is we have to continue to build trust with our staff, build trust between ourselves, and ensure that, we all feel like we've bought into what's going on. But I don't think that lack of a fully vetted and built strategic plan, which would be impossible in the time frame that we're talking about, should preclude the moving this on to both boards for discussion and approval.
Thank you. I have Mr. Santos.
Great, thank you very much. I agree with Mr. Robbins, Ms. Greenwood, Ms. Gray, and Ms. Sanchez. We need to move forward with this budget, and I don't see anything here that is so problematic that I will not support. I do agree that we need to begin the planning as early as possible with regards to the strategic plan that I suggested earlier. I do understand that it's going to take time, but my suggestion is let's move forward with this budget, and then hopefully by next year we'll be able to have a strategic plan for 5 years. It was suggested. I think it should be 5 to 10 years, but I will defer to other views as well. I agree with what has been said by Mr. Kryman. Mr. Kryman came in, he had no experience in the pension industry, and within a few months, we were in a pandemic trying to figure out how to move the operation out of the building, dealing with people being exposed to the virus, and some of them had been positive. So it was a task. I mean, I think I reported this before. I was getting phone calls from Mr. Kryman late at night on weekends because of the issues that he was dealing with. He had to move immediately into providing the staff the ability to operate from home. So it has been a monumental job. I don't think, I have not heard Mr. Kryman use the excuse that he's new, because he's been too busy dealing with the issues at hand. We cannot deprive the staff of the tools to operate. It is, those of us who are in the board of retirement have seen it, and I've been really concerned about that. There's way too many mistakes that are being made. You know, the latest one, as we all know, was this situation with the COLA. It's something that is concerning, and we need to, I want to make sure that we provide the staff with the tools to serve the members. I agree that many of our members are not savvy in terms of using the latest technology. So we need to continue to provide a hybrid technology as well as the ability for them to transact in person. Quite frankly, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on using technology, but I do okay, especially because my office keep banging me over my head and saying you have to use it. They want us to use tablets now in court and things like that. So I'm learning, and perhaps we're all learning. But the service to our members, hopefully at some point we get back to sending the staff in the field to educate our members. I think that has been a tremendous tool to educate our members is key. But again, I will not be supportive of not approving or moving this budget forward because we need to make sure that we give the staff the tools to operate, as Mr. Robbins said, is critical. And thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have anybody else in the queue. I'll just say that I think Mr. Santos, Mr. Kryman heard a variety of comments that he's going to have to take and apply at the end of the day. I'm sure he does not want to be in a position where he's having to count to 5 on passing a budget. So I think that comments from all of the trustees should probably be taken into consideration. And I don't think that anybody's intent is not to give the tools to staff to be able to get the job done. But ultimately, there's a lot to look at. I think from the big picture level, there's a lot of long-term stuff that needs to be applied for this budget. But short-term wise, I think you kind of have to analyze what stuff needs to be done in order to get this approved. May 21st is the budget hearing. I'm assuming that we'll probably end up having a JOG-C meeting before that to discuss any revisions and such, but I'll leave that up to Mr. Santos to address or Mr. Kryman to address with me on that. So that being said, once again, I don't see anybody else in the queue. This is not an action item. This is a report. And at the end of the day, I think this was a very good discussion, and it helps actually provide some insight to staff on how to proceed with the overall process. So seeing no additional comments, we will move on to the items for staff review.
Mr. Kehoe,
yes. Yes.
May I? Yes. I just received, and I believe all of us received a copy of the strategic plan for 2019. So there is some document, and I've seen that before, so just FYI.
Yep, and that's consistent, and I believe that we're going to cover that right now in the items for staff review. I think we directed staff to provide us with all documentation that was used during this budget process, including the 100-day plan. Any other items, Bonnie, that
So what I have is that the committee requested a copy of the strategic plan, which was sent, and suggested additional changes to the budget, which includes org charts, a 10-year expenditure by line items and people, any documents pertaining to the budget to be included, and additional details regarding vacant and temp positions. The committee also requested that efforts be made to update LACERA's strategic plan. And then lastly, I have that the committee requested information on how LACERA compares to other systems determined by CEM.
Perfect. So those comments, in addition to the comments that I had mentioned about the 100-day plan, as well as any additional documents beyond the strategic plan.
Mr. Kehoe, one small correction, or maybe I missed it. That we've been provided with a comparison of the last 3 budget. Mr. Popovich, you remember we used to have that. I think it would be a good idea to have those comparisons made so that way we know where we've been and where we're going. I guess 3 years probably will be a good one.
I know the chart you're talking about. We will include that.
Perfect. And I think in the past we had asked for actuals as well. So
yeah, we plan on submitting estimated actuals as part of the next go round.
Perfect. Okay, that now brings us to go to the order. Bonnie, I'll have you do the rounds.
Very good. Mr. Santos?
Great discussion today. This is how things get done around here, Mr. Jones. We all very passionate on what we do, and this is great. As a beneficiary myself, I welcome all these comments because it's important. It makes our organization better. Thank you, and everybody have a fantastic day or afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
I will see everyone tomorrow morning at audit.
Thank you, Mr. Knox.
Happy Earth Day, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins.
I have nothing else. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
Great discussion. Mr. Jones, welcome. It's the first time I've seen you, so welcome. This was a great discussion for all of us. I want to thank staff and Mr. Kryman for all the work that they've done. And thank goodness you do have something to build upon, because these strategic plans from 2017 to 2020 kind of give you a little bit of a roadmap, but I'm sure that you're going to divert quite a bit, or at least enlighten it based on the comments from my colleagues here on the board. So, thank you so much, and everyone, please have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Happy Earth Day. Let's continue to respect our planet. And I love Miss Gray's new glasses.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Ms. Greenwood.
Happy Earth Day. Aloha, everybody. It is 8 o'clock in the morning where I am now, so I'll be seeing you all in an hour when this meeting starts.
Aloha.
Thank you. This was a great discussion, and it was great to see and speak with everybody. And once again, thank you to staff for putting all of this together and for setting up the Zoom format so that we could have it. I hope you guys have a lovely Earth Day and a lovely day in general.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oakham.
Yeah, Mr. Pryor, I hope you're feeling better today.
I'm starting to, thank you.
That's great. Mr. Jones, he's a great addition. He's smarter and better looking than I am, so you're going to enjoy having him on the Board of Investment. Great discussion. Look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 9.
Thank you, Mr. Oakham. Mr. Jones.
Happy Earth Day. Excited about contributing to the future vision and future improvement. So we stay atop the not only the county pile, but the sovereign fund pile as well in terms of an organization. So.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Johanna Fontenot.
Oh, thank you, Bonnie. Good morning, everyone. Very good discussion for 2 hours, but I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, JJ Popovich.
Just thank you for a good discussion. Appreciate the input. And I do want to say that Mr. Kryman has had a lot to deal with in the last first year of his time here. But he's never wavered from the fact that we do need to go through a strategic planning process. He has been clear to that to the staff, and that is a commitment of his. And I just wanted to recognize that that's always been on his radar as something that needs to be accomplished. And it's just, we got a little bit impacted by COVID, I think, and that delayed, I think, a lot of his initial plans. So I just wanted the trustees to know that he has been very aware of that, and that has been a focus of his. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JJ. Santos Kryman.
Yes, I just wanted to thank each of the trustees for their input. It's very valuable. It gives us a lot of things to consider. And I think ultimately, I want to make sure that you all are aware that we are our intent is to make sure that we elevate the reputation of LACERA and recognize the good work that our staff are doing. The trustees, I'm hopeful now that we've gotten to a more steady operational area, that I'm going to be able to spend a lot more time with the trustees moving forward. And so I've asked Bonnie and Norma and Linda to start setting up individual calls with you all. I would prefer to see you in person now that I'm inoculated fully. I'm very comfortable going out and seeing you face to face. I had a great opportunity to see Mr. Bernstein and Mr. Knox yesterday. It was wonderful to be in the office and actually see some of our trustees in the office. We had a really very productive meeting. And so I look forward to seeing you all. I do want to apologize if you know, I'm pretty passionate for LACERA as well, and I just want to make sure that I communicate to you all what you need to know in order for us to move the organization forward. And so, so if I was out of line, I apologize. But just know that it comes from a good place. It's not personal. It's just we're all in it together here. So with that, Earth Day is important. I used to be the director of beaches and harbors, and I know we had massive issues surrounding that and events. And so, so thank you all very much for your patience with myself over the last year and with the development of this particular budget. We have a lot to think about, and we will take everyone's thoughts into consideration and provide you with the information you need in order to make a decision on this particular budget moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and Chair Kehoe.
Thank you. I appreciate all of the comments today. I think it was a very robust discussion and very diverse discussion on views and thought. And that's exactly what we need in this boardroom. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the big picture item is what we're focusing on, and improvements. And I think we're going to be there. I'm really looking forward to what we have in the future. So I appreciate everyone's comments, and we'll move on now to adjournment. I need a motion.
Move to adjourn.
So moved. Okay, everybody, have a great Earth Day.
Take care. Thank you.